Hello, I'm back, and it's time for another bonus. I've had a pleasant week off. I suppose I'm married now. That's the big news, isn't it? Turns out I didn't get cold feet, I didn't run away, nothing bad happened, and everything was rather nice. Anyway, I suppose you've left me some probing personal questions, so let's get on to them. Techno Taco says, Stu, have you ever tried any authentic Mexican food? Crunchy tacos and burritos don't count. The proper authentic stuff? Probably not, no, I don't think I have. I've had plenty of interpretations of Mexican food, normally of the American style. That's what most restaurants in the UK tend to be. The closest I've come is probably my trip to LA. But it's all burritos, it's all American style. I mean, the Californians, they do have their own take on it, but it's not quite authentic. I should take a trip to Mexico sometime, get some authentic stuff, I really should. Thief Copy says, Hey Stu, gotten around to Dark Souls 2? Do you know, I haven't. I've only played a very small amount of the first Dark Souls on PC. But, you know, a lot of people are talking about Dark Souls 2 at the minute, and it's probably something I should play at some point. So I'll stick it on the backlog and, broaden my experience where I can. Trouble is, of course, my backlog's huge. I think next up on the RPG front, I want to play Dragon Age, because I haven't played that yet. And I too want to taste the bitter disappointment that is Dragon Age 2. Vegas Boy Jenkins says, Stu, are you going to get Trials Fusion? Well, I haven't bought it yet. But I suppose I could pick it up. I have bought all of the other Trials games, so I guess I might as well complete my collection. Now, it's £28 on Amazon, but I think that includes all the DLC. But I don't know, I'm not sure if I want to spend that much. I might just buy the digital copy. Ian is Great 10 says, Congrats on getting married. Have you played the Total War series? I have, yes. I bought the Grand Master Pack a couple of Steam sales ago, and I think I played most of them. I preferred some to others. I liked Empire Total War and I liked Rome Total War. Those are my two favourites, I think. But I've only really scratched the surface with those games. I haven't really sunk hundreds and hundreds of hours into them yet. Civilization, that's kind of my go-to for time wasting. Hierophexis, are you following the hype of Super Smash Bros. 4? I've been following it, yeah. I've been watching the character announcements and all that. I've never really played Super Smash Bros. All that much, though. I mean, in the time of the N64, I was a PC gamer primarily. I've never really been huge on the Nintendo side of things. Having said that though, I do have a Wii U, and there are some cracking games available for it. In fact, the game playing in the background I'm playing on my Wii U. It's a Wii game. What's it called? It's called Zack and Wiki, The Quest of Barbados' Treasure, or something like that. It's a pirate game. I've been playing it for my brief history of piracy. I forgot to mention it. But yeah, I mean, of all the next-gen consoles, of all the Gen 8 consoles, I should say, the Wii U has by far the most interesting and, well, the best library, I think it's safe to say. It has been out longer, to be fair, but there are some cracking games, and I do need to pick more of them up. I still need to buy Monster Hunter. I'm not sure if I'll like it, so I'm kind of waiting for it to be cheap. So I suppose, given that I own the platform, I should probably be more attentive of the games that are coming out. Maybe I should buy Super Smash Bros. 4. It does seem as though there's a lot of people excited for it. Maybe I should do like a one-off video for it or something, just to tap into that. I'll give it some thought anyway. Smithy says, Hey Stu, if you could remake any game you like for next-gen or PC hardware, what game would you remake, and what changes would you add? This is actually quite a tough question, because there's been a bit of a spate of crypt robbing of late. Reboots, HD remasters, they're quite in vogue. So some of my favourite games from the early 16-bit era, stuff like XCOM, for instance, they've already seen remakes. There are some obscure Amiga games that I wouldn't mind seeing a revival. Z-Wolf is one that comes to mind. You played a little blue helicopter flying over a 3D terrain, and you shot stuff, and it was actually quite good fun. It was kind of a successor to a game called Virus, and it also took some cues from another game called Hunter. All of these I'm quite certain you haven't heard of. Maybe you have. But they were all cracking games. Hunter was remarkably ahead of its time. It was kind of ugly by today's standards, but it was a fully realised three-dimensional world that was a sandbox. You played a mercenary, and you were given a mission, and you had to accomplish it by any means necessary. Now, normally it was, you had to assassinate someone. You could drive boats, bikes, cars, tanks, all sorts of things. And it was your goal to sort of carry out your mission on this huge open map, and it was a huge map as well. So it's kind of like a very, very early version of Grand Theft Auto or Just Cause 2. Other than that, I don't know. Like I say, there has been plenty of pillaging going on from the past. I mean, I'd dearly love to see a revival of LucasArts-styled graphic adventures, but I kind of feel as though their time has passed. I suppose Telltale, they're carrying the torch for that particular genre now. Ponyu says, Stu, what are your thoughts about the new Civ game that's just been announced? Excited? Also, are you excited for the new Wolfenstein? See, I told you remakes were in fashion. The new Civilization was called Civilization Beyond Earth. It is, in all but name, a successor to Alpha Centauri. Or so it seems. And yes, I dearly loved Alpha Centauri. Another one of my favourites. It's kind of a sci-fi twist on the basic Civilization formula. Except, of course, you've got stuff like the mind worms and various planetary effects. And, the ability to craft your own units. That was really nice. Alpha Centauri's a bit of an oddball as well. It comes from a time in between two-dimensional graphics and when 3D graphics were fully established. There was a time when Direct 3D, OpenGL weren't standards. And there was some discussion as to whether polygons would even be, the defining trait of accelerated 3D hardware in the future. In fact, something called voxels, or volumetric pixels, basically cubes, like Minecraft, but on a slightly smaller scale, they were touted to be the next big thing. And Alpha Centauri's graphics are all done in voxels, I believe. There was a Command & Conquer game that was similar. I think it was Tiberian Sun. But as you can probably guess, this trend for voxel-based graphics died out. And by the time 3DFX cards came around, polygons were the way to go. But it was an interesting time for a transitional period. It could have gone either way for a while. So anyway, a new Alpha Centauri. Not called Alpha Centauri, but it's by Firaxis. You can bet I'll be buying it. Absolutely, yeah. I'm a sucker for games like that. And hopefully it'll be pretty good. As for Wolfenstein the New Order, I don't know, I'm guarded on this one. A lot of the stuff we've seen so far looks pretty cool. It seems to embrace the fact that it's an old school shooter. It seems to be fun, dare I say. But I don't know, I'm guarded on it. I'm not sure if it's... You see, the thing is, I got burned on the last Wolfenstein, which was okay, just not particularly spectacular. So hopefully, the New Order's good. But it's not as though the next-gen consoles have a whole bunch of other games to take up the slack if it's not. So the new Wolfenstein's a little bit like a pot noodle in a desert. G Off says, Stu, exited for the next Mass Effect game? Yes I am. Mass Effect 3 was surprising in many ways. Not all good. I loved the journey. I'll say that much. There were some fantastic moments in Mass Effect 3. The ending, it doesn't matter how you dress it up, it was disappointing. But I do think that particular story arc would have been particularly difficult to end in a satisfactory way. The trouble is, even with binary choices throughout the course of a trilogy, by the end of it, these binary choices compound in an exponential fashion until you've got an impossible number of endings to write for. And you don't really want to dilute your writing team to write hundreds upon hundreds of endings, so you've got to kind of consolidate somewhere. It's just, well, it wasn't done particularly well, but they had a crack at it, and in hindsight, of course they could do better. I don't know, they should have gone for a cheesy ending. They should have gone for like a Hollywood classic cliche, like a happy ending. Everybody loves a happy ending. Maybe have like a grand set-piece battle at the end. And after a huge slog, the almighty machine eventually crumbles and explodes in a thoroughly satisfying fashion. And then everybody's celebrating, and then somebody turns to Shepard and says, "You've only killed one. How do you expect to defeat an army of Reapers?" And Shepard turns to the camera and says, "I've only just got started." Boom, cut to credits. You don't need to paint a whole picture of the galaxy with exploding light shows. You don't need to do that. Just have a classic boss battle, then end on a high. That's all you need to do. Anyway, yes, I enjoyed Mass Effect. I quite liked the trilogy. And surprisingly, the multiplayer in 3 was pretty good as well. So I am strongly considering a short video series for the, like a weapon guide, I suppose, or, some kind of guide, maybe a class guide for multiplayer, for the next one, definitely. Sir Stair says, why are so many people disdainful of MSI? I have an MSI 760 as well, and MSI motherboard. Both work flawlessly, and I haven't had any issues. I have heard it is the customer support that is bad, though I wouldn't know since I haven't had the need to contact them. Hey, I'm not disdainful of MSI. I mean, I'm content enough to have a graphics card made by them. And yeah, it's worked flawlessly for me so far. It's just my understanding that MSI tend to be on the budget end of things. They tend to be a little bit cheaper, and you do sometimes get what you pay for. I don't know about the state of the component market today, but I used to work in the industry. I was a web developer for a company that specialized in computer components for a few years, in fact. And MSI at that time, they were okay, but there were better options available. Ever Loyal Eagle says, you want horror video games? Have you heard of The Evil Within? I have. It's on my radar. I did mention a couple of horror games last week, but they were both sci-fi horror. I like sci-fi horror. I'm less enthralled with regular horror. But I don't know much about The Evil Within, so it might be alright, I don't know. I don't think they've revealed too much, so I don't know, I'll keep an eye out for any trailers or anything. Nika Corpola says, I was wondering, is the new Iconic Arms series sort of an evolution of Behind the Lines? Or is Behind the Lines itself going to return? Iconic Arms is basically an expansion of the second section of Behind the Lines. In the FAL episode, there was a few minutes on the depiction of the FAL in Call of Duty. So yeah, it's very much an expansion of that, and obviously it covers more games than just Call of Duty. And as well as the gaming focus, there is a blend of weapon history in there as well, although it's not quite as lavish as Behind the Lines. I don't film the real weapon, I don't produce any sort of artificial documents. It's just some basic graphics, some nice bright colours, and some facts. So yeah, I suppose it's an evolution. It's a lot more easy to produce than Behind the Lines. Anything involving real camera work is a pain, absolutely a pain. The Lager video on my Drinks Ahoy channel, that was the last major production I did using my 7D to film. And it was a lot of work. I don't know why it's a lot of work, it just is. It's because you've got to wrangle real-life props, you've got to buy them, you've got to set them up, you've got to film them. So that video ended up taking about 3 to 4 weeks, and Behind the Lines is a similar length of time. Big Temper says, what is your biggest goal on YouTube? Goals at the minute, finishing the Titanfall series post-haste. I'm committed internally in my head to a 10-episode run, and I'm going to release them weekly, but I'm going to try and finish them somewhere ahead of schedule. Next goal after that, I want to do a 6-part Iconic Arms series. I have a feeling that will do quite well. And one idea/goal that I've got floated is the return of Retro Ahoy. I'd really like to be able to find a decent audience for retro-themed content. I've been dabbling in that sector a little while now with the Brief History, Game DNA, and a couple of other specials as well, and generally does okay. I think with the right blend, the right formula, I could make it work. So I guess my biggest goal is to find some kind of Retro Ahoy content that works on my main channel that I can produce on a weekly basis. That's my answer anyway, I'm sticking to it. I don't really have any subscriber goals or view goals or anything like that, I just, I'll take what I can get. I mean, I'd like to be able to get enough to keep me going with this YouTube thing for as long as possible. I'd like that. That would be nice. Raymond Williams says, hey Stu, quick question. Why don't devs add a dev kit graphics option for their games for PCs that can handle it? Well, they do. They just don't call it the dev kit option. They'll call it High or Ultra. For most console ports, you'll probably find the target hardware is the console itself. But for the PC version, if there's any overage, if there's any if they have higher resolution textures that maybe they scaled down for the console release, they'll put them on PC, no need to throw them away, and just put them as a high or ultra graphic setting. Same goes for some of the effects, like anti-aliasing or bloom or, the other stuff, post-processing and things like that. Some of these things will be tunable and they'll turn them up a little bit higher under options on the PC. Skeleton Pack says, what are your thoughts on the termination without cause of Bungie's now former composer and sound lead Martin O'Donnell? Are there more nefarious forces at work, or is it just business as usual? Painful business, but business nonetheless. Oh yes, I think this transpired just before I left last week. It's always sad when somebody well-known leaves a team, and obviously he built up quite a reputation. The music for Halo is fantastic, it's one of its defining traits. So with Destiny on the horizon, it's always a little bit unsettling to see people leaving. But, it happens. People, grow apart, people change. Personal circumstances happen. Business or financial things can also happen. And this can force people out or, make people leave of their own accord. It's all a little bit cloak and dagger, this thing. I think this is for legal reasons, because if they specified why they terminated him, he might have legal recourse. But, with no details released, I'm certainly not aware of any insights here. All we can really do is take it at face value. He's left. Maybe he asked for too much money. Maybe they were paying him too much. It could have been a financial motivation like that. Or maybe it's a personal thing. Maybe he's, not as productive or not as effective as he once was. This is all conjecture. Like I say, I don't think anybody's aware of the details apart from the parties involved. So it's sad, but ultimately, you know, somebody will replace him. And I'm sure Martin will land on his feet and he'll find another role, or, you know, he'll get to do something else, whether it's something he personally wanted to pursue or something else of a similar suit. Luke Torren Wilkers says, Stu, what do you think about doing a Battlefield weapon guide? And what do you think of North Korea? I think we can all agree that North Korea is best Korea. Now, as far as Battlefield's concerned, it was so close to almost nearly happening, but it just never did. It never transpired. A few reasons why. Call of Duty Ghosts was kind of in the way. The launch issues really soured me on Battlefield 4 as well. I tried playing it on PC just before Ghosts released, and you couldn't string two games together because the servers were crashing. So I thought, alright, well fine, I'll do a Call of Duty Ghosts weapon guide, and then after that maybe I'll pick it up again. And then I never really did. Additional factors. There are too many guns in Battlefield, and they're all the same. Well, they're not all the same. There are very mild differences between them, but I don't know. The differences do seem decorative on most levels. And finally, the Battlefield community isn't spectacular. Now, I know what you're thinking, Stu, you do Call of Duty videos, alright? And the Call of Duty kids, they're all 13 years old. Yes, you're right. But the people who play Battlefield are 14 years old, and they've got a martyr complex. Before you write a comment and you tell me, actually, Stu, I'm 16 years old. I know, I'm being glib. I'm sure there are 40-year-olds who play Battlefield, and the same goes for COD as well. It's just, it's circumstantial. I mean, given unlimited time and unlimited assets, I would have done a Battlefield 4 weapon guide, absolutely. It's just, I don't know, there are things I'd rather do. At this point in time, I'm happy to be playing Titanfall. I'm looking forward to being able to start my Iconic Arms series. I might play some Battlefield for that, if I get a chance. And beyond that, I'd also quite like to maybe revive Game Over at some point. Attempting to start a weapon guide for a game that's got 50 plus guns, for a community that's extremely PC focused, and the mere presence of my channel's name is enough to incite unrest. I don't know, I'm not sure if it's worth the effort at this stage. Not 6 months past release when the game's, you know, it's past its prime and there are things I'd rather be doing. Spinosaurus Kin says, Total Biscuit did a good video on the is it a game debate. A game requires a failure state. You can die in Minecraft, you can't in Dear Esther. You see, that's nice, but Total Biscuit is wrong. There are games that lack a failure state. One that comes to mind is probably one of the best-selling PC games of all time, Myst. It's an adventure game in which you explore an island, and I think there are a couple of edge cases in which you can possibly have a bad ending, but for the most part, you can't die, you can't fall off a cliff, you can't do anything like that. There is no peril, there is only exploration, there is only puzzle solving. And in fact, if you look at the adventure game genre, there are quite a few examples in which it's impossible to die, in which there is no failure state. The Secret of Monkey Island, for instance, is another one. There are a couple of... They're almost Easter eggs. They're so well hidden. There are 2 spots in which you can die in The Secret of Monkey Island. In fact, you can't even die in one of them. One of them is a joke. If you walk off the edge of a cliff, you fall off, you bounce back up, and Guybrush says, rubber tree. But the game makes a joke of it. It actually comes up with a game over screen. And it's aping older adventure games that were brutal. I mean, from the legacy of text adventures like Zork, where it is likely you'll be eaten by a grue. Stuff like that. They were brutal. You could die just by typing in the wrong thing or taking a wrong turn. But LucasArts recognised that this was artificial difficulty. It was unfun. It's frustrating. So a hallmark of their adventure games was that you couldn't die. And these are hugely popular games. Secret of Monkey Island, big seller, very popular, one of my favourite games of all time. Myst, I think until the year 2000 odd, was the best-selling PC game of all time. It sold millions of copies. And if your definition of a game excludes titles like these, then it's wrong. Quentin G says, how was your wedding? Were you nervous and how does it feel? Any different from just having a girlfriend? Our wedding was very low-key. We just went to the local registry office and had a very, very basic ceremony. And then after that we had a day of food, drinking, and then a week away for a honeymoon. I can't say it does feel any different, but we were dating for 8 or 9 years. I call it dating. So for us, marriage was more of a gradient rather than a single event. We just, we signed the documentation last week, that's all. LeGrieve says, hypothetically, if you could live off one thing to eat or drink, which would you choose for the rest of your life? Beef jerky or your favourite alcoholic beverage? I think I'd rather be full of beef than permanently drunk, so I'd probably have to go with beef jerky. Although the prospect of nothing but beef jerky without any sort of liquid doesn't sound too appealing, if I'm honest. Anyway, we've hit the 20-minute mark, so I'll wrap it up here, get this rendered and uploaded. Next few weeks are going to be Titanfall. I'm thinking I might accelerate my schedule a little bit. Now that I've got the formula, the format down, I'm going to steamroll through the 8 remaining weapons. I've nearly finished the 3rd episode. I'm hoping to do 2 a week. I'll probably stick to a weekly release schedule until I've finished the entire lot. And then once I'm done with those, I'm going to move on to a brief history of piracy, get one of those episodes out, and then Iconic Arms after that. I can imagine there are quite a few people who are excited for the commencement of that particular series. Some good news on the behind-the-scenes front. They have finally enabled fibre broadband at my local exchange, which means I can finally get an upgrade from ADSL speeds. I'm currently pulling about 15 megabits down and 0.75 up, which is dreadful. But from the 6th of May, I'll be pulling down 80 and pushing up 20, and that 20 megabit upload speed, it means I can upload videos so much more quickly. Anyway, I'm excited. Anyway, it'd be nice to have a faster upload speed. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. I mean, farewell.